Gentlemen, thank you for being here. I appreciate your courage, and I appreciate your dedication to the truth and your sense of obligation. Surprisingly, my questions are actually going to be about your testimony and the subject matter as to why we're here. We're going to have a little shift to actually talk about what you're here for. I'm going to cite specific spots of your transcript testimony for each of you, but I don't think you'll have to read along. I'm going to do it for the purposes of the record. If I ask a question after having cited one and you want to refer to it and take a pause, please let me know, but I think pretty much we'll be able to follow along. Mr. Ziegler, you stated on page 17 of your transcript that you started this investigation in November of 2018 after reviewing bank reports related to another case that you were working on a social media company. Those bank reports identified Hunter Biden as paying prostitutes related to a potential prostitution ring. Also included those bank reports was evidence that Hunter Biden was living lavishly through his corporate bank account. Mr. Ziegler, when you make this statement, did you actually review these bank statements? This is not knowledge, in other words, that you got from someone else, that someone is relating to you what they said. You've actually looked at these documents.
That is correct. I actually looked at them.
Mr. Shapley, you testified on page 57 concerning the 2014 tax report that what Hunter Biden did is that he told Burisma to send that income to Rosemont Seneca Bohai, and that when the money came back to him, he booked it as a loan. You then go on to testify that it should have been taxable as soon as it became income from Burisma to Hunter, and whatever he did with it after that was really just a scheme to evade taxes for that year. You add that Rosemont Seneca Bohai and it did not book this as a loan itself, so Biden is treating it differently than they did. Did you look actually at those records? Is this actually your viewing of them to make this to create this testimony?
Yeah, I looked at the evidence, especially Ziegler would be the expert that saw every single piece. But yes, I saw that evidence. So,
Mr. Ziegler, you also looked at these bank records with respect to the 2014 tax payment from Burisma.
Yes.
Mr. Shapley, you went on to say, this is like textbook. I learned at basic training nominee stuff, and in all of these defenses, it was a loan. You got to have a promissory note, you've got to have defined interest, and you've got to have repayments, and none of them were included. So Hunter Biden claims this is a loan, but the company he got it from doesn't claim it as a loan. There's no promissory note, there's no interest, there's no repayments. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And they actually booked it, Rosemont Seneca Bohai booked it as a deduction.
As a deduction, meaning it would have been a payment to him, and so it would have been deductible to them.
Correct.
Income to him, then payable with tax. Excellent. So, but it wasn't just the bank documents that you looked at. You also had the opportunity to look at a memo from Eric Sherwin, and Eric Sherwin was actually Hunter Biden's accountant. And Mr. Shapley, in your testimony, page 57, you included Exhibit 4, a memo from Hunter's accountant saying, you're going to owe tax on this $400,000. So you've got the accountant even agreeing with your position that this is income and that there should have been income tax paid on it.
Correction to that is that I did not provide this document. This was provided by the committee.
Okay, excellent. Well, we have it then in the public testimony, public record of his accountant agreeing. So both of you, I think, indicate that the taxable amount of the $400,000 would have been about $125,000 that Hunter Biden would have had to pay on the $400,000 of income. Is that correct, Mr. Shapley?
That's correct.
Mr. Ziegler?
Yes, that's correct.
And you've had no evidence in all the records that you've looked at that those taxes were ever paid?
No, they were not.
Yeah, no, they were not paid by Hunter Biden.
And since the statute of limitations was allowed to run, Mr. Shapley, you go on to state that in order for him to pay this, he'd have to pay it voluntarily, that the government doesn't have a way to compel him to pay it because they've allowed the statute of limitations. It's not he got out of criminal, he got out of having to pay the tax, right?
That's correct. The civil and criminal statute of limitations have expired for that tax year.
So he has in his pocket $125,000 of money that should have gone to the federal government as taxes. When in the state of Ohio, you've got average family earning about $62,000 a household. That's like 2 full households of tax income that he got to keep in his pocket. The thing I wonder is that he could pay that today, right? Voluntarily.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, yes.
if he chose to voluntarily, yes, he could.
And perhaps Mr. President, who's supposed to be in charge of taxes coming to our nation and who so frequently tells us that the American people aren't paying enough taxes, might want to wander down the hall at the White House and turn to his son and say, Hunter Biden, why don't you pay your taxes for 2014? Because I got 2 men who just testified. There's $125,000 owed, and he ought to cut the check. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.